What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for joining me today. As promised, I want to bring you a full roundup of new eyeshadow palettes that I've been trying. I think they can all qualify as being pretty much in the new category. Some a little fresher than others, but you know what I'm saying. I'm trying my best here. Right off the bat, before I forget to say it, there are two new Viseart Petite Pro palettes, and I have them, but I have not yet had the chance to play with them, and they will be some sort of upcoming video, but they are not included in this. Just letting you know. But I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 palettes to talk about in this video, and I am going to kind of categorize them like I did the face palettes. First we'll talk about kind of least favorite category. I've got a few in the middle and then a few favorites too. And the new Urban Decay Naked palette will be part of this video also. In fact, that will be the demo, the tutorial that's in this video, and it's not necessarily because it's my favorite palette. I just wanted to exhibit some things that I'm trying to explain with it. But let's dive in. First thing, and this would be the palette that I guess I like the least, and this is disappointing for me to say because there was a time when Smashbox's Photo Op eyeshadow formula was like killing it, and they were everything, and they were my favorite, but this LA Cover Shot eye palette is just not doing it for me. This is what it looks like. I feel like they're trying to do something a little interesting over here with several pops of color, but I will say I feel like there's an entire weak section here, and it's right over here. Not so much with the large kind of oblong shade. Sorry, I've got a really raspy throat. I feel like I need to clear my throat constantly, but it like won't clear. But they've got this plummy shade that just cannot look like plum to save its life. You got a taupe here that I really struggle to make show, and then this unusual tone of gray where it's really not even deep enough to really act as a crease color for me. It's just sort of a blah shade, and I wouldn't really use it to blend something out like into my skin tone or something. You know, it's kind of off for me. So this is a really dull, kind of lifeless area of the palette. This shade here, this highlight is fine. That's kind of the saving grace of that corner, but everything else I just can't get with it. This is perfectly fine here, this kind of rosy sector. You get a nice rich matte and some kind of coppery shades. I don't mind that, and I don't mind the warmth happening here. This is a really yellowy gold, and that's not always my favorite, but as far as performance and application, it does work fine, and I like it paired with this warm shade. Then you've got these pops here, which definitely, like, anytime I've used them, I haven't like created a look where this is solely my quad or anything, but I will sometimes take like a purple and throw it in with this, or make this a little more interesting with the coral. So I respect the fact that they're kind of throwing us a bone with a few extra colors here, but overall I feel like if you kind of eliminate this side, I'm not really wowed by this palette. I would almost put it in an average category for the fact that the majority of it does work all right, but then I really ask myself, would I go recommending this to anyone? And the answer is probably no. I just think Smashbox can do better than this. I feel like generally like their smaller Cover Shot palettes, which are a little more targeted in terms of the shade selection that they're going to give you, like it's a real certain color family, or sort of intensity family, finish family. There's a real cohesive nature to those little palettes, and generally speaking I like them better. I actually should dive in and try to like rediscover a few of those. But to me, like when a plum in your palette isn't working, that gets me. I need that to work, and I just felt like I was missing something here. This was not going. It does come with an always on gel liner in the shade Fishnet, so a nice black eyeliner. Works really nicely, and you know, eyeliners are a pretty standard size, so if you did use that up, you would still have a slot there to probably fit just about any pencil liner that you wanted to. There is a nice mirror there. The packaging is sturdy and nice, but overall it's just not gonna be one of those palettes that I'm dying to reach for, that is really helping me churn out some new ideas in my head in terms of looks, so this would be my least favorite in this video. Moving on, we've got some palettes in the middle, 3 of them in the middle to be exact. First one I'm going to mention is this one from NARS. It's called the Skin Deep Eye Palette, and I like this. There are some reasons why I think this is an enjoyable palette and would be for a lot of neutral lovers, especially if you tend to get just about equal enjoyment out of warm and cool, because you are getting some really good cool things in this palette. You got a couple nice like cooler shimmery shades, you've got cooler mattes, and then you've got mattes that can take your look in a very warm direction, plus like the coppery and golden type shimmers. So all these up top are mattes, but then you also have this one right here and this one here that's a matte. So I think every matte tone that you might need is pretty much covered. You've got a light shade, you've got some more medium to deep shades, and I think it's pretty much what you need to set up a look. The texture of NARS shimmers tends to feel very lightweight, I would say. It's not that they're not pigmented, but they're just kind of very thin to the touch, and I do think they build up enough on the eyes, but overall I feel like I turn out kind of a more subtle shimmer with some of these. Maybe worn wet or worn very like on purpose on top of a cream base or even a coordinating base, you might see even more pow out of those. Also, you might find other purposes for some of these larger contouring type shades like on the face. Normally I'll find a contour palette that can double on the eyes, but this might be an eye palette that could double on the face, or definitely in the brows. Like I'm looking at these two mattes right over here. For me, I could probably put those in my brows and make them work. But I've gotten some looks that I like just fine. I think what kind of leaves this in the middle category for me is not about quality. It's not about like the variety of neutrals that's in here. It's just about the overall commonness of the color scheme. And if you guys have watched a lot of my videos, you know I just really appreciate those palettes that seem to have something a little bit unique going on. Something that makes it stand out from the average neutral palette. And this doesn't have a lot of standout stuff, and that might be just right for what some people are looking for. And like I said, if you're kind of equally appreciative of both warm and cool, and you really like to keep things neutral, and you use a fair amount of mattes, because the size of those mattes, that's pretty big up there with those pans. It certainly may be of interest to someone, and I think if you get it, you won't be disappointed by it. Next up in my middle category, I have this What's the Tea Hot Tea eyeshadow palette from the Balm. Now they also have an iced tea palette, and spoiler alert, that's going to be in my favorites category. But this is what the hot tea looks like. Massive mirror there. This is a little bit larger palette compared to what the Balm often puts out. But I look at this shade selection and I feel like this has been done a lot. We have one kind of oddball shade here with this duochrome, you know, the kind that looks a little bit bluish, then it turns a little bit brownish rust, you know. That is kind of a fun shade to play with, but a lot of our powder shadows here, while I think the Balm does great quality and I love their shimmers, I love their mattes, I really don't have anything to complain about as far as the way these apply and how they look. It's just a color scheme that I'd like to see broken out of just a little bit more. But an interesting thing that they're doing in this, and they're also doing it in the iced tea, is they're giving you an eyelid primer in both a neutral shade and a black, and that can really alter the direction of the look. It gives you more versatility with the layering possibilities, I think, and if you're one who likes to do a halo eye, which I don't typically do a lot of halo eyes, but I did one with this palette because I'm like, oh, that base is there. I can go getting something started in the crease, get a little something on the lid, and then I can really like easily and conveniently put that neutral primer, that cream, right there on the center of my lid and spotlight it with like this light shade right here. And it was pretty. And I had this color right here sort of shouldering the look, and I thought it was nice. And I'm not concerned about these drying out. I have had a fair amount of different palettes from the Balm that have incorporated a cream. I mean, things I've literally had for years, and the creams have not dried up or even really changed too much, which is surprising. But I think what you'll find with this middle category for me, it's like quality-wise, I think it's fine. If you're personally drawn to it, I don't think you'd be disappointed. Like there's a really pretty terracotta, like reddish, really reddish terracotta shade in here. A really strong gold if you're into that. I'm not concerned with the quality. I'm just kind of a little bit personally meh on the shade selection, but still I will wear this. Like I will continue to get use out of that palette, and there will be some reasons, as you'll see moving on to the iced tea palette in the next category, where that one's really speaking to me a little bit more from a uniqueness perspective. But always, you know, a cute theme, pretty images, very old school classic. The Balm is really staying consistent with their vibe, and I think what makes them special. But I have one more palette in my middle category here, and it is this new Naked Reloaded. So I feel like everybody and their brother probably has a video on this by now, and I don't know if you care to even hear my opinion on this, but I'm going to share it anyway. I need to go on record, don't I, on the new Naked palette. I appreciate the more compact packaging. It's just thinner. It's got this kind of plush satin thing going on top, which I do like. I think it's visually, like, when I got this in PR and when I took it out of the box, I just thought, that's gorgeous. Like, it really just looked nice. They've taken out any sort of extra here, no eyeliner, no brush. That's fine with me. Just give me the eyeshadow, thank you very much. And this is our shade selection that we have. A lot of people are comparing this to, you know, the palette that was basically retired from Urban Decay, which is the original Naked. And I'll answer the question right now, do I think this is better than the original Naked? My answer is no. I was very, very drawn to this palette. This was probably my favorite in the Naked palette family. And yes, it only has a couple of mattes, but they're important mattes in the right shades, I feel. Even deeper shades that might have a little shimmer, they still were able to provide contrast and really perform on the eyes. And there was so much variety in this palette. The directions you could go for a soft nude look, a gold look, a brown look, a plum look, and a cool kind of borderline bluish look. Like, it was all here. There was so much variety. There were so many directions you can go. And then when you start, you know, combining that shade and that shade, there were so many ways to work this palette and enjoy this palette. And I feel like with the new one, we've lost a lot of that versatility. I don't completely like, I'm not totally against this new palette, and there are some real strengths that I see. I think they've added more mattes, which is nice, but overall, we've got a pretty darn, like, just basic kind of warm palette here. Here's the thing, Dreamweaver. This shade is actually kind of a dud for me. I cannot make that build up on the eyes. It is drier and dustier than anything else in the palette. I can't make it really pick up and lay down with my brush, and even in a swatch, it's just not particularly, there's something different about that than the other textures of shimmers that are in here. And when you actually kind of lose that shade, look at what's left. It's all pretty warm, bordering on copper, you know, shades of copper and maybe peach. So consider that, like, because that is the one element that makes it a little cooler, and then it's not really fully going there for me. I immediately thought of the Anastasia Beverly Hills Sultry palette when I saw this shade. You know, that mental connection was made, and I think you will be able to find a lot of similarities, even beyond that color, from this palette to this palette. They're not full-on dupes for one another, but there are similarities. But all in all, I feel like in terms of textures and finishes, the Sultry palette is just a little more glitzy than this. You know, metallics go a little further. Some of the shimmers are just really almost reflective seeming in this palette, and this one is a little more soft and subtle, I think. Also, have you noticed that some of the shadows, the two on the outside here, are bigger than the shades going across the middle? So they seem to think these are significant colors, I guess, and I do see that. There is something I really like that's happening in this Naked Reloaded palette, and it's these three shades over here. They're all matte, and they all take you in a very soft kind of gradient. And I think that's really important, especially for beginners in eyeshadow, to have several shades that are not too far apart, but far enough apart to, you know, kind of be their own distinct thing. But this makes blending very easy. If you're doing a crease, and let's say you start out with this shade, and you'll see this exhibited in my demo in a minute, but you put this shade in your crease, you put this shade a little bit above it, and then you blend it all out with that. Like, boom, there's your soft, blown out, easy crease, and then pop whatever you want on the lid and you're done, you know? This little 1, 2, 3 step here, and the shade called Blur, I mean, that really makes some blending very simple. And I could see that being very user-friendly for a beginner. But here's the thing, you've got one rich dark shade, one rich dark matte, and it's gonna be this one called Endgame. And that's a deep brown, and that's gonna kind of make every look be rooted in a pretty brownish place, right? If that's the shade you keep coming back to deepen up your outer corner or your crease, it's all coming back to brown in this palette. Brown with sort of coppery, peachy, slightly golden pops. So overall kind of warm. Barely Baked is this shade right here. It's a very soft gold, and I think that's gorgeous. I wore that in a look and I thought, wow, I'm into that color. I like the kind of of barely there yellowiness that's in there. And I do like retro as a peachy color to blend things out. You know, I love my peachy eyeshadows. I love my warm looks. But for the people who think this is like it's some kind of evenly split warm cool palette, I just don't see that at all. Especially with Dreamweaver being such a weak point. Reputation and Burn, very coppery. Angel Fire can be a little bit on the chunky side, but if you can manage a way to really lay it down, whether that's your finger or just the right brush, maybe you're topping some sort of cream, that shade can be gorgeous, really. But the only shade quality-wise that I have complaints about is this Dreamweaver color. Everything else I think is pretty solid. It's just, do you need any more of that color selection in your life? Do you value this very subtle gradient here happening with these mattes that makes blending super easy? Yes, I appreciate the fact that there's a dark brown in here, but the fact that that's your only deep, rich direction you can go is kind of underwhelming, because look at this. I could have gone like this dark bluish shade. I could have taken it in a kind of a plummy direction. I've got like this dark, dirty bronze. There were just more opportunities, I feel like, in Original Naked. Feel free to disagree with me, but that's just how I see it. And to me, this palette, I may reach for it sometimes, but I'm not feeling incredibly drawn to it. I think it does have some positives. But I will show you the look that I did today with it, so I could show you kind of how that crease came together. So I primed my lids with Milani eyeshadow primer. Then I took Bucked, and this is, I think, a perfect shade to start things out for your crease, and just get that color in there. It builds to a perfect kind of naturally shadowed look. And then I like taking Boundaries, which is a little lighter, a little more peachy, and you bring that just up above your crease. And these two shades are really close, but they're still different enough, and you see things kind of subtly blending out. And then Blur is just a great color to go around the outer edge of everything, and very quickly you've got a very soft, easy, blended out looking crease. Then I decided to take Angel Fire, and I took that around my innermost corner just to brighten up a little bit, and then I went coppery with the rest of the lid. I took Reputation, patted that on like most of the inner chunk of my lid, and then just got a little bit deeper toward the outside with Burn. Got that in the outer part of the lid, a little bit into the crease as well. I feel like every look I do ends in the shade Endgame, and I kind of opted to not take this look in that direction. And I did also take Burn with a pencil brush on my lower lash line. And this is the finished look, a little mascara on top. You know, it's fine. It's fine for an everyday look. People who aren't so hell-bent on, I need to have really different kinds of looks every day, and maybe you generally just like collecting Urban Decay palettes, it's not a total disappointment. It's just not everything I hoped it would be. Now, guys, we're going to move on to my 3 top palettes, and the first one I'll mention here is the What's the Tea Iced Tea palette. So let's look at this in comparison to the Hot Tea palette. Really, really similar exterior at a glance, so you really got to be paying attention. Are they holding the iced teas or are they holding the hot teas? This is going to be cooler overall. It is also going to have the massive mirror, and it's also going to have these primers right here. I'm going to hold it this way because did you notice how these are all like tall glasses of iced tea, and it just makes sense to me to hold it that way. But it's cooler, and there are some really interesting, fun shades in here. This Lilac, you're gonna think, is that matte? No, it has the teeniest sheen. It's so brightening. It's so pretty on the eyes. Like, that is the kind of color that excites me. Also, He Said, She Said. This is like a soft lilac with a golden shift. It's so pretty. The 411 here, this rosy shimmer, absolutely dynamite. Rumor Has It, a nice shimmery brown. You've got this sort of teal color, but very like wearable depth to that shade. And then this I find is a very, very dark blue over here with Talk of the Town. These 3 over here, workable, easy mattes. You got your medium brown, the Rundown, love this like kind of rich blackberry shade, and then the last scoop is a very like cool, deep grayish brown. And I just think there are some really cool looks that you can get with this if you've been craving a cool tone palette that's not just neutrals. I think you would really enjoy it. And again, with the 2 bases, you've got that opportunity to really make something pop on your lid by using that as a base, or you can take this shade shade and just totally deepen it up. I think the Balm's quality is awesome. It's just a matter of, you know, what kind of shade selection speaks to you. Some people will definitely prefer the Hot Tea palette, but for me, I find this to be more unique, more special. There are more shades that I'm just really excited about here, and I like that they balanced it with enough basics to realistically create a really pretty look. But I will show you the colors side by side. There's Hot Tea and Iced Tea. Think about what you already have in your collection. For me, there's just a lot of overlap with the Hot Tea, but the Iced Tea is just fun, fun, fun for me. Here's another palette in my top picks category. This Lime Crime Venus XL2. The outer packaging just, it almost like makes me laugh. I mean, it's beautiful, but the green is just so loud, and then you get into it and you're like, oh, could this be more like earthy and wonderfully like, I don't know, just natural, but yet fun pops. This is a palette that like gets me excited about the fact that spring is coming. You know, you've got the pinks and the rosy shades, you've got greens, and not just one light green, but like different finishes, and something really light, like almost matte, very brightening, shimmers, deeper sage greens, and then you've got your coppery colors that are going to be fun to like layer in and set off a look. This really deep color called Classical, I love this type of shade, this brown mixed with burgundy. Like, that's so gorgeous. You could do some very light, quick looks just using shades like this or this in your crease, right? Or sage as well in your crease, and then pop a coordinating shimmer on the lid, and it's like, boom, there's your quick look. Or I think you can make things a little more complicated by kind of stepping outside the color family and combining a couple of these that I think look so beautiful together. It does remind me a little bit of a Too Faced Romantic Eye feel, but without the plum. Instead, everything's going more toward brown, and you've got this coppery warm edge to it. Radiant over here is so pretty. It's this really light, like barely there golden shade. Thorn is stunning. I want to work with that some more. It's gold with a little bit of a cool reflectivity, which is so rare. For me, I mean, I've done quite a few looks with this palette. I don't think I've even gotten pictures of all of them, but I still don't feel like I've exhausted all the opportunities in this palette. Like, I'm looking at it now and thinking, oh, I haven't put those shades together, or, you know, I haven't worked in quite enough of the copper. I'm immediately drawn to the rosy shades. I'm secondly drawn to the greenish shades, and the coppers I need to work in a bit more, but it's a lovely palette with a variety of textures, some shimmers that are just softer, more pearly. You've got great mattes. You've got some shimmers that, you know, you may decide, I need to lay that down with my finger to get full intensity out of it. If your brush isn't doing it for you, like, there's no shame in picking up something with your finger, and just somehow sometimes that amount of pressure just does the job differently, you know? But really, I think it's beautiful quality and a really fun and unique grouping of colors there. I really, really like it. And I think somebody who wants to do like subtle integrations of color, this is a really fun way to do it. But if you don't really like green, I mean, there's a fair amount of green in this palette, so be aware of that. But I've really had fun playing with this, and I have no intention of putting it down anytime soon, except to reach for this next one. This is my last palette in the mix, guys, and hold on, I need to grab something to compare. This, my friends, is the Viseart Liaison palette. So they've got their bigger palettes. They're like $80 large palettes. They've got their smaller Theory palettes, and this is kind of like the most recent setup they've come up with for eyeshadows, is a 9-color palette. And to me, this is for a person who is serious about true purple looks, because we're not going for just berry in this palette. We're not going for a splash of pink. We're not saying, here, I'll throw you a bone with one purple. We've got really like true purpley shades, and every supporting cast member that purple needs to look its best, okay? I love your 3 neutral mattes right up here. These mesh in with the looks so seamlessly. They just feel like they were made to be with these other colors. Looking across the middle, I feel like there's our splashy, kind of really, really shimmery, beautiful pops. I mean, come on. I can't, my brain just kind of zonked out as soon as these swatches came up. I'm like, I don't even know what to say about these. Pinky swatch, I mean, that color. Who are you? Like, come on, you're so beautiful. It's like a little bit dusty lavender, but not in a, hi, I'm just kind of barely sneaking into your look. It's like, I am going to be shiny AF here. Sorry, but it's true. And then this matte. Oh, that color. Oh, please. And then look at this shimmer right here. I mean, this is a palette where the swatches so speak for themselves, and if you're into purples, you're gonna be just oohing and awing right there with me. Barely touching the dark shade. Look what you've got. And I really mean that this is a true purple lover's palette, because it's not, again, just the pink infused purple or the barely there purple. It's like really true purpley shades, and then you're gonna have your splashes to really make it just an intensely gorgeous shiny look, and your mattes to give everything the proper contrast, and then a really deep shade to work with too. It's just like so beautifully thought out. And I think if you have amethyst and you're semi into purple, this is amethyst from the Theory palettes. If you have this and you're semi into purple and you're like, that's good enough for me, I don't really need any more, then fine, stay with your amethyst, because this is a wonderful palette and I really enjoy it. But if you're like, you know what, sister, I could go even further than amethyst, I want even more in terms of options for crease shades, and I want even more in terms of really poppin' shades that just totally set off the look, you must visit the Liaison palette, because it is everything. The quality is unmatched. I mean, it's just so good. It's a pleasure to use. It is fun to use, and if you like purple eyeshadow, like I thought this was the purple eyeshadow lovers palette, but they just kind of one-up themselves with this, in my opinion. What if you don't already own either of these and you're wondering what to do? I would probably honestly just go straight for the Liaison palette, because it's kind of like a lot of the vibe of what's happening in here, but a little more range in terms of darkness, in terms of brightness, and this color right here is just something very special, and I don't feel like you see that particular shade of purple. It's not Crayola crayon purple, right? It's a little more toward lilac, but so bold. The trouble with some lilacs is that they just end up looking light. They don't actually show their purpleness in application. This will show itself to be true to color. So boom, just amazing. I had to give a #1 pick in this video, this would be it. But hopefully this sorted everything out for you guys. I feel like we were just on a steady crescendo in this video. Like, once we got to the end, it was like, ah! I'm so thrilled with that Liaison palette. I'm kind of glad I'm through testing a lot of other things so I could go back and like do more and more with it. And also those new Petite Pros that I'm so excited about. But thank you guys so much for your time today. Let me know your opinions on these palettes. I welcome differences of opinion, new ways to look at things. The insights that you guys offer me in the comments sections in these videos do give me new ways to approach reviews and new things to think about and new opinions to kind of mull over in my head. So thank you for that, and I will see you guys again very soon. Bye.